We are live. All right, we'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting today. And we would like to excuse Mrs. Cherry, who is joining us via phone. We will start our meeting today with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Smith.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the floor will be open for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Right, those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. All right, the floor will be open for motion to approve minutes from the previous meeting.
Vice Chair, I so moved.
There's a second? All
Second that.
right, those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, superintendent's report.
Madam Vice Chair, I was, didn't have anything official prepared for today's meeting. But I do have some things in when we were going to talk about the safe stuff but during the discussion time, so. If there's no questions, I'll wait for that later on.
Okay, Mrs. DeGraw, do we have any public comment? All right. We'll move on to our consent agenda. The floor will be open for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Vice Chair, I make that motion.
For a second,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. All right, action items.
The first action item is in regards to policy 2700. This is the second reading of policy 2700 with the graduation requirements. With 2700P, the graduation requirements as we are moving from trimesters to semesters. This policy does address what the current graduation requirements would be as compared to the state required. It also has a table that helps us transition by year with our current graduation requirements. It has that the core and district specific credits are still required during this transition, but a waiver for previous electives may be available. Other than that, that's the main part that was changed from the previous policy. And so I don't know if the board had any other comments or concerns on this one. I know that last time that we looked at it, there were some grammatical errors that were looked at, and I think those have been addressed in this current one.
So is this the one that's this is the final one after those grammatical changes?
Yes.
Because I still see the
Oh.
ones that I talked to you about.
Okay, I haven't re-uploaded it. Let me re-upload it.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So,
Thank you.
if you want to re-upload it, then I'll pull that.
Yes.
I think you got mine. Well,
Sorry, guys.
Refresh. I don't know what page.
It's page one of the files.
Look here. Reshare that screen. So. It was pause. Your screen share is paused. Is that when yours that you? I got it. Here we go.
So you need to go to,
The second reading edited is at the bottom one
yes,
with those grammatical changes in page 2.
Looks good.
It's good. Okay. Excellent. So that means that. Thank you, Mrs. DeGraff, for doing that, and thank you, Mrs. Ridley for representing that.
We'll go back to the action item.
Gotcha.
Great. And the floor will be open for a motion to approve policy 2700P.
Madam Vice Chair, I so move.
Second? Those in favor? Motion passes. Page 4.2, alternate authorizations.
Vice Chair. So in Idaho code defines a process for teachers to acquire teaching certification through non-traditional routes. This process requires the Board of Trustees to be able to approve the teachers for provisional license as part of the application process to the State Department. So these teachers must complete certification requirements that include the praxis tests, state-specific requirements, and additional college credits. It's common for districts to request an alternative authorization for hard-to-fill subjects like CTE, science, math, special education. So here are the teachers that are proposed to for certification under the alternate certification routes. And if there are any questions, the board can see those teachers that are there.
Okay, if there's no comments. The floor will be open for a motion to approve the alternate authorizations for 2023-24.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, I move that we approve the alternate authorization for 2023-24.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. All right, action item 4.3. Admin financial rights.
School board is responsible for the financial oversight of district operations, and the district fraud prevention procedures require all spending to be reviewed and approved. Checks and other authorizations must have a 2-person signature requirement. High school principal Christy Scott will need to be given financial rights to be assignee for the high school and junior high. So this is just the process for the board to approve that.
Just scroll down, and make sure I get the wording right.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, the floor will be open to approve that Principal Scott be assignee for the high school bank account.
Madam Chair, so move.
There's a second.
I second that, Madam Vice Chair.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. 4.4 spending approvals.
And this is gonna be a bigger one. It's gonna include some bond projects. We did invite Mr. Erickson to be here as the interim maintenance department supervisor and help with any of the questions that we have. And so we'll start off with the spending approvals. And I do have on here the bond projects financial update. I did put that on this morning. And so that will give us an idea of where we're at with all of these as we're talking about bond projects. And so let's start with the action item and then we can go back and forth on the different ones that we need to. And as this is several projects in place, each of these are broken down so that the board has the ability to approve or disapprove where the projects are at, what takes place, and the amount of money with that. So the first project that we're going to talk about that's broken down into 3 different sections is the parking lot, asphalt repair and replace. When we initially, and I'm going to go, as I'm talking, I'm going to go back to our bond update as I'm bouncing back and forth. Initially, we had around $250,000, $260,000 that we earmarked for parking lots. We in our code, yeah, the color code, is what's budgeted, the remaining
here.
balance,
Here.
and if you. You can make that a little bit bigger by
There you go.
control,
Oh,
there we go. Um. The board has allowed us to move different projects around, and initially we were, the roof projects were 300,000. And then we bumped it up because we had the chance to have so many more roofs taking place. With the latest one, the reason why the roof projects are 443 is the elementary classrooms and the elementary gym project, which will be starting next
Friday.
this Friday. You'll be coming in and starting that. And so you can see how we've moved this around. I really appreciate the board and our maintenance department as we've looked to see how can we get the best lasting impact amount spent with this bond money? What can make the longest lasting best support of the district? And I think we are doing that through this process. And so the parking lot is one of those issues that we initially, and I'll just show you the map of the school. Initially, we were thinking to come in and pave these sections around the football field and track. That would be a great thing. But however, after this last winter with the amount of snow, we've noticed that our parking lot, our existing asphalt needs to be taken care of. It doesn't make sense to jump in and add more asphalt and let the current asphalt crumble away and not be repaired. So this first proposal that we have is to replace different areas that need to be fixed. And Mr. Erickson, I'll go through and share everything that we've talked about. And if there's something that I missed, feel free to interject at any time. But one of the main areas, and that's going to be project one, the elementary. Back here by the lunchroom and these dumpsters, the asphalt is sinking in and there's ruts where the garbage trucks come in. What happened is when we called a couple companies to come out and look. The one company that gave us the bid mentioned that the gravel down below was not compacted enough. It needs to be compacted hard enough so that asphalt will actually be able to stay. So this whole section needs to be cut out and then recompacted for it to work, which is actually going to help because there's a couple with snow removal at times. There's a couple of drains that are sticking out that, from what I've heard, it's not very fun to hit that with a snow plow. And so that will be able to smooth all of that area out. There's a couple smaller patches throughout the driveway as well. Am I missing anything, Mr. Erickson, on project one?
No.
So you're just replacing, you're not doing the whole thing.
No, they're cutting out a pretty good section back there. And then they're taking out about 18 inches of dirt and bringing in new road fill and compacting it to about a 99% compaction level, which is road grade standard. And then they're laying new asphalt over that area.
Okay.
Just to repair those spots. And most of these projects we talk about are all a repair type of thing. Asphalt's crumbling, they can't seal it because it's already crumbling. The only way to fix it is to cut it out and replace.
Seems like a lot of money for repair.
So they'll cut that out. You know, and prices have, like, if we were talking about this 4 years ago, it'd probably be almost half. And that was part of the whole process. Is even last year when I was talking to them about the paving. If this would have been done 5 years ago, I think we probably could have had all of that done for less than 200,000. It's just the cost of everything has gone up. And but to maintain that, if not, it's just gonna crumble. Even if we came in and just sealed that section right here, it would just continue to crumble. And so that's project number one. Project number two. This is one where the repair area is over here in front of these dumpsters. Is that just because we have a lot of the trucks coming in on that? What do you think?
Just looks like it's old, looks like it's old asphalt. I don't know what is causing it. Just when we rolled around the building and I saw it, I was like, oh, that section's got to be cut out too. Not a huge section, but there between Don Bird's and what the high school first parking there for teacher parking.
Right here.
Yeah, all the way to the fence is just, it's kind of crumbly there. So they can't seal it, so it has to be pulled out and replaced.
So that's what they're doing that on that side.
Right there.
Yeah,
Then this project two also has a district office section. So just right outside this window, or actually back behind
Behind
us,
you.
straight behind us. There's this grass area. We want to turn that into asphalt instead of grass.
To where?
Right here. So here's right.
it's in the shade right there. It's going to be
Oh, right up
shaded.
against the gym.
Yeah, right up against the gym. There's that grass spot. It's really a worthless grass spot, but it adds 7 or 8 district parking spots by just paving it. So,
Get people park there all the time almost.
Yeah, they're parking there anyway. So we'll need to remove the sidewalks and then they'll be coming and they'll bring the
same fill,
same feel
impact the same way.
and down. So that's what we have for project number two.
And there are some other, in that project, there are some other little cutouts that they have to do. Entranceway of the high school or the main middle entranceway, there's a spot by a couple of the drains. They've got to cut out a 6x6 section there. And throughout all these projects, there's little ones that they don't really affect the cost much, but they are doing other things. There's a drain over here on the side of the elementary one that they're cutting out 10x12 around that drain because the drain is tipped the other way and the asphalt is all crumbled around it. So they're gonna fix all that while they're there. That's all these bids have all that stuff included in it, but those are the main big ones that they're doing on each one.
So it's just the fixes. It's not like, we're not resurfacing the whole parking lot.
No,
So it's
No.
just those.
there's no need to resurface the whole parking lot, but so. But resealing, yes, and that's, we've already did that, or it's not been done yet, but we've already discussed that, I think, in a previous. Is that right? Board
We
meeting?
have, but we have on here those
Oh,
actual bids.
Well, what did you send out?
So on the, what we sent out to everybody, I want to which part.
Something out here that we approved.
Oh, that was us to be able to schedule the ceilings.
sealing.
The ceiling.
Yeah, and those ceilings, and that's what we're gonna talk about on these next, on the asphalt resealing. So we have the resealing project is going to reseal all of the additional asphalt. They'll come in and put the new resealing on, the new
New
lines.
lines.
And that helps preserve the asphalt from hopefully extending the life. So even though it's expensive.
Yeah.
Like you can see if this is gonna be,
Cheaper than new.
yeah, if this is gonna be like $40,000 to replace this, you can imagine how much all of that. So the resealing is very important for us to get on there.
So Dean, what does that encompass resealing? Is it like a chemical they put on it or?
At the end, yeah. So first what they'll do, they'll come out with a machine that heats up a certain, sort of like elastic tar substance. It heats it up and then shoots it down the cracks. So they come out and they de-weed all the cracks with a wood burner and they put a ground sterilizer in the crack. And that has to sit for so many hours and then they fill it with that tar. And then the next day they come back and they put a seal coat that's kind of a tar plus silicone base. Supposed to last 5-7 years, something like that, before you have to redo it. They put that down, it has to sit for 24 hours, and that just makes it so that the water runs off instead of going in to the asphalt. That's our problem is with the winter last year, so many of those cracks were open to where the water get in, and then once that water freezes, it just busts up.
Yes, it expands the crack.
Right. And then you have potholes. And so if we leave them open for this year, we're gonna be replacing a lot more asphalt next year.
Thank you.
And so that's project two, where we talked about the over in front of the high school and then here by the district office. Project three is island removal. And this is where in the back parking lot, these islands that were initially put in when they did the parking lot are there's a couple issues with them. One, the parking, it takes away some parking. And the second one is it really makes snow removal difficult in that back parking lot. And try to maximize so what we've asked, do you want to explain exactly what they would do on this portion here if the board approves project three?
Yeah, so on project three, what our portion of it is, we'll remove all the curbing ourselves. So we'll be doing that. they'll come in and they'll bring in, fill dirt, they've got to raise a drain to meet, there's one drain in the big.
Right here in this
Yeah.
section. I don't know if you can see.
They have to raise that up to the asphalt, so they gotta bring that in and bring some dirt in. Really compact it, and then they're gonna asphalt straight through, and then we'll go through and. Put bollards in at every one of the light poles that are there, but it should add, I don't know, 15. Close to 15 spots, I would assume,
4, 5,
removing it.
6, yeah.
Depending on how we lay it out, but, so they'll fill all that stuff in and asphalt it all flat. And then, it'll make it so that when we plow, the way we have to plow in there now is so weird that we end up hitting the curbing of the islands and busting the islands up anyway. That if we can get it all straight, it just makes it easier. That's one of the biggest and longest. It's been my task with my plow to do that every time it snows, and it takes us longest to do that section because of all the weird.
Was such odd shape.
Yeah, and I think they just designed it that way because it was aesthetically
I think
that one.
they wanted some lands, because it was landscaped. I remember talking to Larry about that, but initially they came in, they wanted to landscape it.
And they did, and then Larry said, how are they watering any of these plants? Because they didn't plan for that water there. There's no water out there. And so this makes the most sense. It was one of the things we wanted to do with when they did these other parking lot add-ons and stuff too. But it makes sense for our time and snow removal and for the amount of people that we have attending sporting events to have extra parking spots. So that's kind of what their plan is there, but it's a little bit involved. Like I said, I think we should be able to pull the curbing ourselves. Doesn't look like it's anything too fancy, but that cut their bill down a little bit, them not having to do that. But.
So those are the 3 different projects that the district's asking for board approval on project 1, 2, and project 3.
Can I just ask what shape our track is in? If are we gonna have any money for it, or are we
So the track,
forgetting that?
we need to still look into the track. The discussion that we had the last time is, if we redo the track, we know that in the next 5 to 6 years, the football field is to be replaced. And so it doesn't make sense to replace the track now and then come in and be driving over that with all sorts of equipment.
Just do one without the others.
So,
Yeah.
so there are some patches and repairs that will probably need to take place on that.
Which we found the patching stuff the other day. We have no idea we even had any, but we have some for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I know that's where we had it initially, and. You know, like I said, as we have the discussions with the initial bond projects. We're still aware that that's a need. It's just one of those that when we're comparing it to the asphalt or the roof. You know, those are the things, the roofs take priority, the asphalt takes priority. And with the cost of everything going up, we're trying to find the most efficient way to have these things last as long as possible.
Thank you.
So since that back area next to the east of the track, since it can't be paved right now, is there any way of grading it so it's a little bit smoother? Because I know that there's quite a lot of dips.
Yeah, and we did that last year, and the problem is what happens is, once it rains. And you get a big truck out there, they're gonna have the same divots, and we'll kind of talk about some ways that we can mitigate that hopefully in the future. But yeah, that bring in some extra gravel. There's some other things. The one nice thing that's moving in the asphalt direction that has just kind of started up is there's a lot of ways now where you can lay your own. And it never used to be on truck delivery and ways that they can actually lay it coming out of the truck where you can do it yourself. And so down the road, we may be able to do these spots a lot cheaper, just doing it ourselves.
Is it gonna take any extra equipment that we have, or?
Well, we'd have to rent a roller, the right size roller, but I mean, compared to what you're gonna spend to have a company come in and do it. You know, we can compact the heck out of anything with the right roller. And now they've got like H&K, they'll let you order hot asphalt from them and they put chains in the back of their trucks so that they can spread it evenly as they go. And so they can come out and just drop, and so you're just paying for the cost of the asphalt and whatever labor to rake everything smooth, but we already have 4 or 5 transits, we should be able to manage some of that stuff ourselves, and so it may be something down the road where we can do piece by piece of it. You know, just in the maintenance department to be able to get it finished, but yeah, for this year, definitely, we want to bring in some more stone, probably spread it around. And we probably would rent one of those big deals, because if we could wet it down and actually compact that stuff in, we'd have less of a chance of that happening.
Dean, do we have it in the budget to bring in that, you know, extra gravel?
Oh, I think so.
Do we?
We can find gravel pretty reasonable. We have other places, so
It's gotta be like crushed gravel, doesn't it? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be something where if some of these other projects, you know. We have a detailed account of the projects where we're at, and so there's still, even with the proposed 195 that goes to the parking lots for what we have on the proposal today, there's still remaining of 442. And so some of those are earmarked to other projects, but we still have some flexibility.
That we can get that done.
We can look at that. Look at that. So,
Are there any other questions, comments? Right, the floor will be open for motion to approve asphalt repair project number 1 near the elementary.
Madam Vice Chair, I so move.
For a second,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Right, the floor will be open for motion to approve asphalt pave and repair project number 2 near the high school and district office.
Madam Chair, so move.
Is there a second?
I second, Madam Chair, Vice Chair.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Floor will be open for a motion to approve parking lot island removal project number 3 near the Panther Tent.
And Vice Chair, so moved.
I second, Madam Vice Chair.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
Madam Chair, the second bond project in it is the resealing. We kind of talked about that a little bit already with it. The Panther Den resealing is quoted at the 21,586, and that would be the driveway coming up by the trees and all of this section here. Is that right, Mr. Erickson?
Yeah. The only thing they won't seal in these, just so you know, so anywhere that we're doing new asphalt where they're cutting it out. New asphalt can't be sealed for probably a year, 6 months to a year, so it'll probably be next spring or so before they ever seal over that again. So where they take out the islands, they won't seal. The seal companies know all that. Where they cut it out in front of the grade school or behind the grade school there, they won't seal that section.
So does that mean we need to save money for that, or is the money included in this?
No, because they're small enough sections that we can seal them.
We can seal it.
Oh, in-house, we can sell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they're small enough sections that it's something that gets rolled on. There won't be any cracks in it that have to be filled, so we don't need any special equipment. We just buy the right product and put it on. So it's something we can do in-house, and so I didn't even have a budget for it. Makes sense.
And none of these projects we're doing here today can be done in-house. Too much, too big.
Not this year, and that's our problem, is we're on a time crunch before winter. And it's like, we are doing other projects here that are saving money. That we took on and are saving money, Chapeltorium being an example of that. But this one, I looked at doing it ourselves. And yes, we could do it cheaper, but the man hours that it would take to do it, we just couldn't get it done before school. There's no way.
And they'll have this done before school.
Yeah, so the sealers are scheduled to come out on the 27th is their first day, and they'll do all the crack sealing that day for the whole property. And then on the 28th, they'll be back out to do a third of the sealing. And then the next weekend, they'll come out and do another third of the sealing, and the weekend after that. So it should be before school. And after, once they do the seal coat, it's a 24-hour wait is all. And then they'll paint all the lines and everything at the same time.
Same with asphalt repair.
Asphalt repair, that's the problem with asphalt repair is we don't have a time because we're not approved with them yet, or we haven't pushed that through. We just barely got the bids back this last week. They're probably 3 weeks out. So some of their stuff, I don't know if they'll get to it before school, but most of their areas that are working are not going to really affect a lot. Like they can easily be working back there. They've also been told we're running 4 days. So if you can work Friday and Saturday, it works, but they'll get it done before winter. Just, I don't know if it'll be before school starts.
The area back by the cafeteria though, that would be the area that would be probably first on the list.
It is first on the list
Because of buses
because of buses, yeah.
and foot traffic.
And that's what we told them. They had to hit that one first. All the other stuff like the islands coming out, like they could be into September, October with that. It's not going to affect anybody back there really. So yeah, the ones behind the grade school, because the bus pickup is our #1 project.
Would the island removal in that area be affected by when you have home football games, that sort of thing?
Well,
People back there?
yes, but we will have the island part removed because that's an in-house thing that we agreed to do to lessen cost.
Mhm.
We will have the island moved. People will be able to drive through the dirt on that.
It'll be level.
Yeah, yeah, so for the most part, the islands will be removed to where people can meander. They'll probably only spend 2 days back there. And so if they just schedule it right, yeah, if they just schedule it right, spud harvest, whatever. They can schedule it to where it's not affecting anybody. I'm not worried about that one. So that project and this one in front of the ALC here would be my biggest concerns, just because you have the library and traffic and stuff like that. So that's where they would start. Or those first two, and then the last one would be essentially, if they can get to the last one until next spring, we'll deal with it for another year. But their indication to me is 3 weeks, and the way they work, they roll out in 3 weeks and they don't want to bring their equipment back. So they're going to do everything. They'll bring 20 guys out here and be working on each project to try to get it all done as quick as they can. Because it costs them more money and fuel to have to run everything back out here again to do it.
Do you think the dumpsters, when they're raised and then they're lowered, do you think the lowering of the dumpster is impacting the asphalt
No,
being dropped at all?
no, when asphalt caves in like that, it's always the sub that's the culprit. It's generally not because the truck's too heavy for the asphalt. It's because the sub underneath was not compacted. The government has certain levels that they have to meet to make road compaction. And that's what H&K runs off of, which is it's a 98 point something or other. And it takes a bit to get that. And if you just have a run of the mill company coming out and that one section there is close to the building, they only got 50% compact. Well, over time, that's going to settle and then going to sink everything in. And that's what's happened there. You can go back there today and visibly see the ruts that are there. But we have a drain that sticks up about 6 inches out there. That's just a piece of concrete that sticks up. It's going to eliminate all that. They're going to grind that down and make sure that it's down below the asphalt. So there's a lot of things that they're doing on those projects besides just cutting out and replacing dirt. But compacting part of it is work, but it is generally the culprit of any of your asphalt breakups or stuff like that.
So with the resealing and the painting of the lines, one thing that I've talked with Mr. Harrison several times, and just want the board to finalize, we do want these to go the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Correct? Is that what the board?
I think we talked about that before.
You make them like Sam's Club,
Like Sam's Clubs, like we have like little.
it's really wide, so then kids can't all hit their wires against other.
Yeah.
I don't know if it matters how wide we make them.
So are they too narrow?
They're standard size parking spots. I think that the objective we're trying to achieve there is we're wanting to make this one way in front of the grade school. By turning the parking the other way, it makes it so that cars have to flow that way
Yeah.
instead of coming back the other way. And obviously, we're gonna have to put arrows. We're gonna have to get signs that say one way, and we're gonna have to traffic it a little bit and police it a little bit to get people used to, hey, we don't come in the other way.
Yeah. So the direction is gonna be west to east, right, coming?
Yeah, so you,
Yeah.
Yeah, from
yeah,
over
it
here.
would just flip this way.
You go clear past the ALCs at
Yeah.
high school.
Yeah, and so once you get to that center entrance, the lines will stay the same, correct, Shane? We're not going one way all the way through, or were you wanting to, all the way through the high school?
I don't know, that's what we needed to talk
Yeah,
about
we
now.
need to talk about it. What's best? What do you think?
Well, I think in front of the grade school, it's necessary because of little kids,
Yes,
but I don't know that it's necessary in front of the high school.
We can still have them come in on this side and then
Right.
go up, they can still park that way.
yeah,
And they can still come west to east as well.
Yeah, they could still come in the middle entrance and go the other direction. It would just be one way from here to there. There'd be a sign there that says no entry. And another sign from the other side that says one way. You know, and then arrows that point the direction. That's what I was envisioning, but if we're wanting to go all the way through,
I don't think you need to though.
So,
I think that works better to have them flow that way and then they can go out that middle.
I
Yeah.
think doing it all the way across would mean that you would increase traffic by the elementary
Yeah, you would.
because
yeah,
people have to go all the way through,
Here.
right?
you
yeah.
would have to go through.
It's
the
like you would
elementary.
eliminate the middle entrance.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So yeah, that's the plan, and the sealers that are doing the line painting, they're aware that we're wanting to change that, and they're completely cool with it, so.
So let's talk lines. I like that. I envisioned it differently to have them all go all the way down, but after hearing and looking at this, it makes sense to not do it that way, to have them flow to the middle
Yeah,
on that. And so back by the Panther Den. We have single. On this. Do we want to change that where we go single?
You're talking
Double?
at the driveway entrance?
Yeah, like the driveway entrance. Is it better to have cars parked up against the fence, or is it better to keep this path straight through?
Well, nah. I would love,
But like, what's better? I don't know either.
I'd love to see a bus lane is what I'd love to see. I don't think it would matter. Sorry. But I think that if you were to, you're adding parking spots by removing them. If you were to take these parking spots away, make it so a bus can make this corner and drop kids off and spin around. Right now, a lot of times we come in with a bus and back straight up. I hate that.
Yeah. it's not safe.
And so for me, if we're gonna do anything here, I don't mind them parking against the fence, that's not a problem. But we need to cut two of those off so that it's not a narrow entrance at the deal. Right now, what
I
happens
see
is
that.
it's now one way right here. You have to yield to the car coming in because they can't get around you, but if you just removed two parking spots, it wouldn't be that way.
On both the middle and the fence.
Correct.
So we'd have to move that no parking sign out a little further.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Just having someone who understands buses and.
You understand buses and driver's ed, and that's why you're thinking it doesn't matter how wide.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't matter how wide. I see how my wife parks in these parking spots now. I know it does not matter how wide we make them. It's just that we over the lines, man. She knows.
She knows.
So when they redo the lines, do they also repaint the speed bumps?
Yes, they will repaint speed bumps. That is in their deal. Handicap stalls will all get repainted. And we didn't ask them about arrows because we haven't quite finalized how we're doing that, but they won't have any problems doing arrows. And to be honest with you, I have like a whole cupboard full of line marking paint that was ordered. And so if they can't do the arrows, we'll just make a stencil ourselves and do the arrows ourselves.
Perfect, so that's gonna be the two projects that we have. We did ask if we could schedule this because we're trying to get it done. I did send that email out, so this is a partial of approval here for that. That was the question that you had.
Are there any comments? Any other questions?
So,
All right. Before we open to vote for motion to approve the asphalt resale project number 1, Panther Den Gymnasium Driveway and Sports Complex.
Vice Chair, I still move.
Is there a second?
Madam Vice Chair, I second that.
All those in favor?
I,
Motion passes. Floor will be open for a motion to approve the asphalt resale project number 2, high school, elementary, library, and district office.
Madam Chair, I so move.
A second,
Madam Vice Chair, I second that.
all those in favor?
I,
Motion passes.
A plant facility request that we've had is. I've visited with Mr. Erickson. On how a skidster would benefit the district, something I even talked with Mr. Soderquist about this. It's something that we could use. And I didn't put all the details here, I can turn some time over to Dean to say what some of your thoughts would be. But we do have budgeted already in the plant facility a vehicle purchase. We've done that. This year we don't anticipate.
having to buy a bus or,
Well, this is not a bus, this is not the bus portion. The bus portion is
Oh,
still
okay.
separate.
okay.
So
We did buy a vehicle.
with last year's fiscal year, because the fiscal year ends, I'm talking about like right now,
The fiscal year 24 budget.
Yeah.
24. So it's where that starts this month to next
Yeah.
time. We did go out and buy the district vehicle 2 months ago, but that was with fiscal year 23, other than 24. So what we're asking for is we do have that in the budget. Instead of purchasing a district vehicle, which we wouldn't need, we thought, why not look at equipment? And Mr. Smith, you even mentioned, what if we had our own equipment? That's one thing,
Yeah,
we either have to rent or borrow. I don't want to say steal, because we're like, but we have to either rent or borrow, and it would be nice for us to have something here that we can use, and a skidster is versatile with all the different attachments. So Mr. Erickson,
yeah. What attachments do you anticipate with it?
Don't iron.
You would need a
Some
bucket,
options.
a bucket for snow.
Bucket and forks. So right now,
And
we don't have
forks.
anything that helps us unload semis. We don't have a pallet jack, we don't have a forklift. So if somebody comes in with something big, we have to borrow it from a farmer or somebody to be able to get it out, or we have to hand unload it. So bucket forks is one of them. Snow blower that runs off of hydraulics would be on the top of my list, because right now, the way that we run snow here is we show up about 2:30 in the morning any day it snows, and we hand shovel most of our sidewalks. And that takes a long time, and I don't want to do that anymore. So having a snow blower allows us to go through and snow blow there, and then directly ice melt afterwards in a fraction of the time it takes us to walk through and hand shovel. And then when it comes to drifts and things like that, it manages that.
Would your skid steer break up are you talking using it on your sidewalks?
No, it's
Wouldn't it
not that
break it up?
heavy. The ones that we're looking at are not, like, we're not lifting 1-ton bales, so we don't need a huge one. But it won't break up the sidewalks. We've had one out here that we rented that we've used this year to break up sidewalks. We haven't had any problems with that. But to be honest, all of our sidewalks most of them were poured at 6,500 PSI. So they're rated for heavy trucks. So run it on sidewalks, but that's not the only thing. So every year we have an issue with the softball field and baseball field not being ready. By having that attachment on a skid steer allows us to not be right down at the dirt, but to be off the ground 6 inches in snow blow to allow that field to melt off on its own, but to get the majority of the snow off to open it up for those fields and not have the sort of debacle we had last year with the fields.
You're looking at a track machine, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the one that we're looking at, if you want to know what the one I'm looking at specifically, it's made by JCB, and it is called a teleskid. So it actually is a skid steer, but the arm telehandles out about 12 feet in total. So allows us to reach into trucks, allows us to put things up on a roof if we needed to, allows us to pile snow higher with just that machine. And so that's another reason why we want the machine is we borrow a lot of farmers' equipment to keep our stuff here, or we have farmers that come down and do it. And I don't like the liability when a farmer shows up with their own equipment to do it. It puts liability on them if they were to break up a curb or something were to happen, who's got the liability, and I don't like that. So this allows us to, as we go, as a pile gets as tall as our skid steer, we can then move that pile. We don't have to wait till it gets 20 feet tall and then be like, we need the biggest loader we can.
Well, what'd be nice about it is if you got a pile out here, you can pull in there with a skid steer to shoot it across the highway in
Yeah,
the middle of the night when
yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of aspects to it, and then we're talking about dirt work. So like some of this stuff with H&K, we're removing the sidewalk in front of this grass patch, they're going to asphalt in, we're removing the curbing. We do all that with our own skid steer, and we can rent one for $200 a day. It's hard this time of year to find farmers that don't need their equipment. And so to me, it makes sense for us to have it. I'm very much about doing a lot of things in-house if it saves us money. And having this machine allows us to do a lot. It allows us to do things quicker, more efficient.
You know, some of the other projects, I'm gonna pull the map up here, as we're looking at how a skid steer, so we talked about the snow removal, talked about unloading. If you're able to reach up to a roof, there's different things on the sides of the roofs that projects could be done, taken care of a lot quicker, just having, you know, a lift on the floor.
Well, we got that man lift, right?
Yeah.
But you could buy like a man cage. We have one for our loaders that you could put on
Yeah.
pallet forks.
You can build
And
them.
it would be
We
a lot
probably
more
just have,
acceptable to run around,
That's something we-
especially if it
Yeah.
telescope.
Yeah,
Definitely, but we can have our ag department say, hey, this is what we
Yeah.
want, buy the material,
Yeah.
kids can build it for it.
kids could build it.
There's
with a
a,
plaque on it.
yeah,
But yeah,
You mean to say that we've never had a snow blower and people? do-
oh, we have a snow blower.
but the push one.
Yeah, you stand behind it, walk behind it. That's what we blow off the track with every year.
But this one's connected
Why?
to the
And this
front
could
of
run on the
the,
track.
This could run on the track.
I've
Yeah.
never had a skid steer called-
No, we borrow for a lot of money from different people or we rent. So any of the dirt work that we've done since I've been on, I've rented from different places that drop skid steer off here for a week at a time, try to get everything done in a week. This would allow us to be able to do that stuff all year round. Not to mention, okay, we haven't even touched this aspect. So I spend a lot of time moving pipe in the summer here.
oh, let me show the grass first.
So
So that's, we don't have a sprinkling system.
So the sprinkling system that we have is, oh, I have it cut off. The sprinkling system is basically back here by the
baseball field,
and back by the hill. And that's part's cut out. But everything that you see here does not have does not have an automatic water system on it.
it's all pipe that we hand move. And it's really tricky because it's not like it's a straight field. So you have all these weird areas and we have guns set up here and there, try to hit everything. Oh, we're 2 feet off on that one. You know, but you got a 10-foot section of pipe, so then you have to be either lose 2 feet of grass or be over 10 feet of water. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense. But the one good thing that we have going on is we have a main line.
Right here.
Yeah, thanks, Shane.
If I got you.
Runs all the way through the property there. And when Larry put that in, he mapped out where all the risers on that main line are.
So it runs, so the pump is right about here and runs straight through this way, right over to that edge. That's where the main line.
So we have a map that shows everywhere that they plugged off a place where a water line could be attached to it essentially. And so with the skid steer, we'd be able to either rent an attachment or buy an attachment. I've been really into auctions lately. Have on our own trencher and just do it ourselves as we can. We don't have to pay another company to come out and do it, but we'd have underground sprinklers everywhere. The interesting thing about our sprinkler system is it is ran off the ditch, so we have to call for water. So a lot of the intricacies of having a box that runs a timer, we don't even need that because we call for water when we have water and our pump is big enough that if this was all underground, there's a good shot we could run them all at one time and cut our watering down to 1 day or 2 days in a week, opposed to trying to water one section for 24 hours over a 10-day period and then shutting water off. And this would just allow us to go in and turn on water valves and go. These sections are all on. But a skid steer would allow us to be able to just lay out and go. We don't have to have any approval or anything. And then pipe wise, we lay our own pipe, do our own sprinklers.
Is there a trencher attachment for this?
Skid steer, yeah.
There is.
There's a treacherous attachment for skid steers that'll go 8 feet.
8 feet.
8 feet deep. Oh,
8 feet, yeah.
wow.
I was surprised. when I
Below
saw
the
it.
frost line.
Yeah.
Way below.
Yeah, so, and we wouldn't need anything that big, but if we had our own trencher, so like, one of my things in front of the high school, the fact that we're pulling hoses in front of the high school to water the high school ground doesn't make sense to me. So one cut in line against the edge of the building would solve that problem for us, where we could just walk away and go, that's watered.
It appears to me that you're trying to bring us into the 21st century. what are you trying to do?
It's not, I don't know that I'm trying to bring you into it. What I'm trying to bring you into is I want to see the maintenance department move to the projects that we can do in-house to save us money that we have time to do. And if we keep doing things the way we are, the only time we have is to fix the repairs. And by doing this, it allows us to, when we have a classroom remodel, instead of us going through a company and saying, hey, we need to spend $80,000 on cabinets for these 3 classrooms. Over the winter, we have the ability of building those cabinets ourselves and saving us 40 grand
If you're not out pushing snow
all day long.
all day long,
And
there's a chance you can maximize the man hours.
yeah,
Instead of running out of the 40 hours now.
if we can save enough money in a year to justify the salaries that we have in the maintenance department, I've done my job, is how I look at it. And I have the expertise in cabinetry and all that stuff to where it doesn't scare me to build my own cabinets. We have the facility here to be able to do it pretty easily. So in buying equipment and stuff like this and doing these things and getting rid of these things, it's lessening the man hours on my guys to be able to prepare for the big stuff we have going on in the summers during the winter. If that makes sense.
So with all these attachments that you need for that skid steer, is the price that you quoted, is that gonna be able to include all that, or?
I
is-
think
is it
so.
Gonna need a little more.
I think so.
You're talking a trencher and
Yeah, I
snow
found,
blower and pallets.
I found the JCB deal, right now, I've got a guy on the hook in Connecticut for about 30 grand. And
Okay.
it's only got 200 hours on it. It's a 2018, pretty nice machine. It's gonna cost a little money to get it here, whether we go and get it or whether it
Okay,
gets shipped.
does he have the attachments with
He
it
has the
there, or do
bucket.
we have to get them?
He has the bucket and the forks with
Okay.
this particular unit. Usually you're only getting the bucket. But he has the bucket and the forks, which saves us about 2 grand. And then there's a bunch of different auction sites that I've been able to find, like the snow blower and stuff, where they're going for about $2,500 for the snow blower.
There would just be some add-ons.
Yeah, and so I think for the price, by the time we got it here, we're asking for 40.
Yeah, so what I'm
We
saying
pretty
is
close.
that 40 realistic?
Yeah,
Or do you want it higher, is what you're asking?
No, I'm saying if we need it, we need all these attachments.
Well, your freight to get it here will be about 5-ish.
well, on the skid steer, 2,500. They quote me $1 a mile.
$1 a month.
Yeah, that's what they quoted me, but
Oh.
that's their company doing it.
Oh,
But wheels have been turning in my head. About my problem with shipping it is they may be 6-8 weeks out and I don't want to wait 6-8 weeks.
yeah.
So I'm like, we have dyed diesel. If I can get a fuel tank in the back of our truck. We have our own fuel already paid for that's dyed. I just drive there in 3 days and drive back. And it costs us right around $1,800. But right now, I'm limited to what I can do. I can sit in a car. You know, and so I'm up in the air on how we do that, whether we ship it, because anytime I've ever shipped, it's always taken a while, and I would like to have this to do some things before school starts. So, so yeah, all that kind of stuff's up in the air. We're watching the auctions, see if there's any better buys. The problem with this particular machine, there's not a lot of them, and people who have them don't want to get rid of them.
It already have the high flow
Yeah,
hydraulics on.
high flow hydraulics and everything. I can send you a link if you want of the actual machine. They show it running and everything, but has the high flow hydraulics on the same arm. It's different than a regular skid steer because you don't enter from the front. It's side entry.
And it's closed cab.
Yeah.
Closed cab,
Closed
air
cab with
conditioning,
a heater in it, so you can run it in the winter.
air conditioning and heating. So, and like I said, it's a 2018 and it's got like 212,000 miles or 212 hours on it.
Oh,
So it's pretty new machine.
oh, wow.
So
And it's tracked.
if something were to happen to it, is there someone locally that?
JCB is in Idaho Falls. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to be able to service it once you buy it.
It's funny because I talked to a lot of farmers of what I should get and everybody's telling me I should get a Kubota. But the one drawback with Kubota is there isn't anybody real close that services them. They bring people from Salt Lake or whatever.
Oh,
And I like Kubotas. I've operated them a lot, but no one does this telehandler combination but JCB. And to me, it's worth it to wait, even if we had to wait till we found the right deal. It's worth it for me to wait for that machine than it is to just go buy a run of the mill skid steer.
That's where we're at. We're seeking approval to spend up to 40,000 of the 53 there. And that's where that from 40 to 53, really, that's where we really could probably buy some of those attachments. for. If we buy those attachments
Yeah.
separately, we're not gonna need board approval for
Yeah.
individual attachments.
What I tell Dean is get all the attachments that you need. Make the machine, really work good for us.
Well, and that's my plan. So I like that idea. Cause there's a lot of things we could do with it and I borrowed enough farmer's equipment this last year for snow that I was like, yeah, and it's not as big of a deal if we borrow the equipment and they sign off on it, then the liability is still ours. But a lot of times people like Mud Lake Farm Supply would just bring their tractors down and do it. And the problem is if they take out a curb or they accidentally backed over somebody, it's really a gray area whose liability covers that, and
Somebody gets hurt.
I don't like that. On a business standpoint, from a business owner, I don't think our liability insurance, well, from what I know of liability insurance, they would be like, no, that's an easy way for us to not have to pay it. And so this makes it so we can do most everything we want in-house, but the liability stays our own.
So, how are we gonna get it shipped here in decent time again?
Well, so we have a dump trailer that will haul this.
So you're thinking about going and getting it?
Depending, I didn't narrow anything down with them. They know that we were interested, but I knew I needed approval first. I told them I would talk to them if we got approval and then see if they're like 6 to 8 weeks on shipping, then I might explore other options. I might hook that up.
Is there private ship companies that you can,
Yeah, but they cost way more than
is
that.
that right?
You
They're
can get a hot
outrageous.
shot For that,
Pardon?
you can get a hot shot for that size and it would be cheaper than like semi-freight. And even if you got semi-freight, if they're shipping 3 or 4 at a time, it makes them pretty cheap.
Cheap, yeah.
So it just all depends. Is it private or is it company?
They use some company. I don't know who they,
Some shipping company.
yeah. Yeah, so that, and then I think this particular skid steer, if we were to buy that one. They do have, because it has so few hours on it, they still have a 1 or 2 year warranty on it or something. So that is one nice thing about it.
If it's $1 a mile, it's gotta be. It's gotta be a hot shotter.
Yeah.
So,
I was surprised when it said it was that low.
I mean, too. You can't freight it for that cheap, even if you go pick it up yourself.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, it would cost us about $2,500, I think.
I'd wait for them to deliver.
Just think about like a cruise, but on land.
We just hook it to our RV. Just hook it to our RV and I'll take the whole family.
Travel's not bad to get through all the big cities.
Have you ever been back there?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
I bought my Cisco truck back there. This is a little farther back. It's in Connecticut, so it's a little farther.
So where's this one again?
Connecticut,
Connecticut. That's pretty far back there.
31 hours. It's not
Yeah.
bad. 3 days.
Not
I don't-
4 hours to spare. 3 days.
No one is chiming in.
bad. I'm not signing up for that.
All right, are there any other questions on this topic?
Well, I think it's a great idea to update on this.
The floor will be open for a motion to approve the proposed budget to purchase a skid steer.
Yeah, Madam Vice Chair, I make that motion that we approve the budget to purchase the skid steer.
There's a second.
Oh, certainly.
Those in favor? The motion passes.
We'll keep going with some other projects that we have going on. So 4.5, the Department of Environmental Quality, I'm just gonna call it DEQ from here on out. It's a lot of and the Hamer well. So you had a chance to read through the process on this update. So water tests in June, from the DEQ found that the well at Hamer tested positive for E. coli. Superintendent interim facilities supervisor communicated with the DEQ to discuss the options and to correct the situation. Upon being informed of the results, a public boil order at the Hamer School was posted, signs were put up at the school, I believe they even covered up the
Yeah, water fountains.
water fountains.
Yeah.
We sent a mailer out from the United States Post Office Service, to the Hamer zip code residents. Advisory notice was sent social media and on the district webpage. So we've done our due diligence to make sure that everybody's aware of that. So the DEQ, I'll take a step back. Our water tests in the past years have been overseen by the Department of, the Health Department. As of just recent, the DEQ is now required to come in, so that's at like in a couple of months, isn't it, that they changed that?
2 years.
2 years. And so the health department requirements are different than the DEQ. The DEQ has a little bit higher things that they have in place. And even when it comes to testing the wells, Mr. Soderquist was able to have the certification to test under the health department. And they've grandfathered him in under the DEQ, but if we would have started with the DEQ, he wouldn't have had the qualifications to look at the water systems. And so you can see that we're dealing with some different requirements, which aren't bad because like we need to have safe, like this is a safety concern. We need safe, healthy water for our students and those that are in our buildings. So the DEQ gave us recommendations and their recommendation was to replace the current well. We looked, said, well, what are we looking at? So the current well at Hamer was drilled in the late 20s. That's, you know, we're nearly 100 years on that well. And it was drilled at 40 feet.
A good well.
So you look at that, so they're 40 feet down, but that's one of the reasons why, because they're 40 feet, if there is any leaching or anything from a septic or whatever, that's where the E. coli was like, okay, we're like, we need to have a change. And so, but the well is located in the basement of the mechanical area. So they basically drilled the well and then built the school around it.
Which isn't code anymore, you know.
You can't do that anymore, but you could back in the 20s. As I looked at like the history of Hamer and the school and the different things, you know, they've built around that. And when you go down into that mechanical area, you see a very old foundation down there that, you know, so there's no option to use that current well. And they recommend at least 100 feet, or recommend 120, but it should be at least 100 feet. And correct me if I have any of this information.
Is that in depth then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the new one, when you look at that, so the DEQ, when we visited with them, they said, well, we're gonna help you look into grants and other financial assistance. I have not heard from them what that is going to be. But we're kind of in limbo going, we need to act and get stuff set up if we're going to have it ready before school, or at least a couple weeks after school. So like worst case scenario, if school starts and we don't have this done, we're gonna have to have water up there for the kids to drink. We're gonna have to have bottled water for them. We're still able to have that. But the DEQ, as their required qualifications are higher than if we would have just done this ourselves. If this was something that we would have recognized ourselves 3 months ago and just came in and said, we're gonna get a well, we're gonna do this ourselves, we wouldn't have had to have hired a project engineer. But when DEQ gets involved with it, one of the requirements is you have to have a project engineer. So that has increased the cost of it. And so if the goal is to have it completed before school starts, the process kind of has to get expedited. We've been talking different ones, but we also know that as a school district, we have to have board approval as we're moving through that. So we have requirements for the DEQ. We're trying to figure out how do we wade through this also without bypassing and making sure we're going through the process of what did the board want? So really, we're coming in with a project here, and if the board wanted to, you could come in and say, stop all of this, don't do anything at all. But that's part of the board, and we would have to figure out, okay, what's our next step? But this is what DEQ has recommended, and this is what administration has come in and said, this is what we need to do. So a high estimate we're thinking is about 45. Initially, when I sent out earlier in the week, I thought 30. But after visiting with Mr. Erickson and him getting a few more of the quotes, we want to make sure that what we're projecting, 45,000 would be the estimate for the entire one. And so we have that broken down. The engineer is 5,700. The well drilling is going to be about 20. Pump, trenching, plumbing, everything else, once the well's drilled and we have everything in, trenched, plumbed, we're thinking about 15,000. Incidentals, we want to make sure we have a little bit of extra just in case. And so funding options, when you're gonna like recommendations from us, how are we gonna pay for this? This is an emergency. We do have a plant facility emergency fund of $200,000 that's available at all times. We try to keep that there. That's something that this money could be taken from. Another fund is, there's a fund that we have specifically for Hamer Elementary. When the Hamer City moved from the designation, disincorporated as a city into the county, they gave the district a certain amount of money. It was $50,000. He said, here's $50,000. We'd like to have this available for Hamer Elementary. And then we have other grants that we haven't seen the exact amounts that can help reduce this amount of financial burden.
Will the grant reimburse, or do you have to use it initially?
It's a really good question. When you reach out to DEQ, I'm hoping they'll be able to reimburse, because if not, we have to wait, and it just pushes this out. So we're in a real,
I think
Tough
it's
situation.
reimbursable, these grants.
I hope so.
I can call her afterward.
Let's call the DEQ and find out exactly on that one. That's a good question. So if there's other things that you see or questions you look at, so options considered but not recommended. So these are from by administration that we are recommending to the board. The board can take this information and act how they want to. There is an irrigation well that was drilled in 1990, and that one is 120 feet deep or 100 feet.
120.
120. We were hoping, I was thinking that when we first saw that well, and we pulled out the specs, and thought, yes, we can just pipe into this one. It's not gonna be a big deal. But when they drilled that well, the specs were for irrigation only. So I guess they didn't follow all the drinking water stuff that it need to. It saved money back then, but it didn't allow us to do that. And so it would take us, was it 80,000?
That's what they're quoting, about $80,000 to make it so we could tap into that well for drinking water.
Yeah, so that's not even viable. It's like double of what.
Drill a new well.
Yeah. Then the other one that I hear people that bring up, they say, well, if we have an issue at Hamer, why don't we just close the school down? And I put in here, this is not a recommendation. It's not recommended from the superintendent. That's something the board would like to explore. It's not my recommendation, and I advise against it for several different reasons. First, the potential savings that we think that we would save by closing Hamer School, like if this was it, oh, the well went bad, let's close it off. First off, if the school's closed down, we would have to sell the property. If we were to sell the property, we would have the well up to
Oh, yeah.
code anyway to be able to sell it. So it doesn't matter. We're stuck with this well regardless of whether we close the school and sell the property or not. The well has to be done. But the other potential savings, if you take the ADA for 12 students compared to the ADA of 20 and 23 at Terraton, you take those students, you put them into Terraton. Even those students coming to Terraton doesn't generate another teacher. Maybe one teacher here, but not 3 teachers. The 3 teachers that are assigned to Hamer already have their contracts signed. We are contractually obligated to pay them next year. Even if we brought them to Terraton and said, here you go, we would be paying them, but we would not generate support units or funding. So it's, and when I looked into this, my first year as superintendent, there was a lot of discussion about, well, let's close Hamer School because we need to close it down. I emailed the financial office. I said, how much would we lose in funding support? This was back, like I said, in 2019. And he said it's approximately $180,000 in teacher pay and benefits that gets put to the school. Because Hamer Elementary is also a rural, so there's another multiplier. So it's the district actually gets more for those. And so if we put the students here, that ADA disappears. And so it's not, it's almost,
It just increases your class
it
size,
increases your class sizes with fewer,
no teacher.
with no teacher. And I know that's just if you don't, if you're saying, well, why is it that way? I have my own questions about how Idaho runs schools. I can't defend it. That's just the way it
It's because
is.
They had so many rural schools with not very many students, and they had to
And so
do that.
So even that trade-off here, well, there's still a cost to the building, that building cost would all go away and it would all go out. But I will be clear, if financially I know that Hamer is going to cause a problem for our district, I will be the first one to say, this is my recommendation. A well going out where we have the plant facility. We get the plant facility because it's voted on by the patrons of the district. And the patrons of all 5 of your areas vote on that. And overwhelmingly that, like, you can't just say, well, if I'm from Territon and I vote for this, then I don't want anybody from Hamer. Like, we gotta put that out of our mind. This is a district. And when you also look at, if we came in and said, Hamer, thank you for voting for that bond, for that plant facility 10 years ago. We have the money for it and you have this, but we're not gonna help you with it. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. And so if there ever is a time, I will recommend, if that's what I see, if that. But when you look at any of our facilities, and in my mind, I'm thinking of the map of the Territon campus. There are things that sometimes look like that's a bigger expenditure. Why are we doing that? It benefits a community. And Hamer School benefits their local community in a way that's different than what it is in Territon. Whether it's right or wrong, there's always going to be some type of expense that happens at the schools. And so I don't want to go too far into this because I know this isn't let's discuss whether or not we're going to close Hamer down or not. But it's not a recommendation that I have. And at this time.
And we called a well drilling company to get on the schedule.
So here's where we're at with this. So we've done everything DEQ wanted in a very timely manner. And that's, I think, a lot of the reason why DEQ is like, we're gonna work with you to get funding because they don't see that happen a lot. We have an architect that has architected the plans and got them in, but he is very specific of who he has drilled, and his Dennings Drilling is who he wants, and they're good. But I was afraid that they wouldn't be able to get us in our timeline, but they snapped back. They're ready to go in the next 4 or 5 days if we're ready to pull the trigger.
And said,
Yeah, so I went up there and marked where we're wanting the well drilled so that they can roll their stuff in if we decide to go this route. So the chances of us not having this done by school, because we're a school, a lot of these companies have bumped us on the list because they know it's priority and for kids.
Priority.
And so we have that ability of completing this project by then easily enough.
So tell us where the mark is, or in the school,
So-
where you decide.
Okay, so if you're looking at the school, if you pull into the driveway and you're looking at the sort of east side of the school, there's that east side entrance. And there's a basketball hoop right there, a single basketball hoop just outside. What the company's gonna come in is we really struggled trying to find a place that wasn't gonna be in the way of kids and that kind of stuff. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna come cut off that basketball hoop.
Oh, no.
We'll put it back up.
Put it back up.
They're gonna put it back up, but they're gonna cut it off so they can get their driller ready to drill a well directly behind that pole. So it's not in the way of everybody.
So it'll be east of the pole,
It'll be directly behind, south of the pole,
south of the pole.
of that one pole.
What I'm worried about is what if you hit rock, lava rock?
Well, they're aware of that. The Dennings they're equipped to deal with that.
They probably have rotary beds, don't they?
Yeah, they're
That go
equipped to
through
deal with
rock.
that, and they drilled
That's
loads of wells in Hamer.
Notorious.
Yeah.
there.
So that they have specs that they're going off by the engineer that has been approved by DEQ. So our next step is to get them out to drill and put the casing in. At that point, Troy O'Sullivan probably would be our pump guy who installs pumps and stuff like that. He'd probably be doing the install and the trenching and that kind of thing, with our assist on plumbing into the building. But
So you have an arrow
So here's the Hamer school.
You can kind of see the yellow mark, but. When they took that picture, so they're gonna cut this pole off and they're gonna roll their rig in, and they're gonna drill directly behind that pole. So that the well is not very visible, it's not gonna be something people are gonna trip over, then they'll take, at the end, they'll take that deal and weld the. Hoop right back in place, they weld casing all day long, they should be able to handle that, so that's what they've agreed to do. How they're getting in there, he hasn't decided, he doesn't know if he's gonna drive around the back or if he's gonna come in from the side. The only thing we really have to worry about for drilling purposes is, they flood irrigate up there, so we have to make sure they don't flood irrigate before they come, so they can get their rigs in. But yeah, so we worked pretty hard and fast to try to make this happen this summer before school, because my thing is, if we can make it happen, we don't have the added expense of bringing some sort of water source up there for them to use. So my goal is to have it done before the first day of school. And it sounds like with these companies that we'll be able to. But it's an expense and we know it's there, but I'm with Shane. You guys are gonna do something to close the school and sell it. That's the first thing they're gonna say, well, we need drinkable water here.
So my question is where it's found in the well, you're gonna flush the entire system, right? As far as all your pipes and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff?
yeah, how do you clean the pipes? That might have contamination
Well,
in it
we
from
have
the previous well that's.
We had a chlorine system up there. That's chlorinating, and so they'll use that, but to be honest with you, one of our goals here. With this 100-foot well is to not have to chlorinate, and we're looking at the same thing at this property at some point. We have this chlorinator and we spend so much money testing for chlorine. That's what most of our testing is going for. When DEQ is telling us, if we drill our well this deep and the water comes back, we can do 2 tests a year instead of 1 a month. And so we can backflow all that stuff right into, there's a sump pump in that room. And so we can put a air compressor essentially on one side of it. But DEQ will let you run that stuff through. You'll flush it all out and then they'll let you take a test, what she's saying, in the first 6 months. And then again, after the next 6 months. But so testing wise would change considerably because we would no longer need chlorination if we're that far below. I don't even know that we need it here. I think our well here is over 250 feet deep, but we have a chlorinating system anyway. So all those things are things we're looking at, because if we can cut costs on $100 test here or every month or whatever, then I'd like to do it and provide better water for the district. All of us are drinking out of that same aquifer. Problem with this one, the well is here now in this little jag.
It's like right there.
It's right here in the basement. This is the septic field. It's 83 feet. Code is it has to be over 100 feet from the septic. So essentially, the E. coli that they're drinking are coming from their own septic field. We're moving it back to about 120 feet from the septic field at that mark.
Will it eventually leach that far though?
Not according to them, not if you're 120 feet deep. That's what DEQ specs are, is you're 120 feet deep, you shouldn't have that problem with E. coli. You'll get some of the, what do they call it, coliform, but that's not as big of a deal as E. coli is. Like there's that particular bacteria in almost every water system. It's just a matter of there's so much of it that it's going to cause a problem. Most people are immune to it, doesn't ever affect them, so it's not something that's high on their priority list, but the E. coli is. That's directly coming from fecal stuff. So more than likely, that's where that's coming from, is from that leach field. So this is the best case scenario for us as far as where we put the well and all that kind of stuff. Did a lot of him and hawing on how we're going to do it. This makes it so we only have to trench a line about 25 feet right there and then a 2 foot into the building. And then replace lines, and then they will cap off the old well, consider it abandoned. Which is kind of in our favor. It makes so we don't have to have a drilling permit if they do that, which saves us a little bit of money. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at. The way things are looking right now, if we're to go on it, we can have it done by beginning of the school year.
So you mentioned the 50,000 that was gifted for this school?
And that be.
Are the funds available right now to use for that
In the
purpose?
budget.
I would prefer to see that money used first, since it is for the school itself.
Yeah, can it be used right away?
It can be.
Can you use some of the emergency money too? Can you
Yeah.
take a little bit from each spot?
We have 200,000 in our emergency fund.
And to be honest, the hope is that we're gonna get that money back wherever we use it.
Hmm.
You know, DEQ has been very. We want to help you fund this and like to the point of all of it. But we don't have the time to wait
To wait.
for that funding to come through.
But it still could.
So,
Still could.
and I think it would be appropriate to share some of that, because I think you could look at both sides of it and say, well, that's their school. They should just take care of it all themselves, but that's a mentality of
Us versus
you,
them.
us versus them, that's your own district.
Mhm.
Where if you're looking at, if we didn't have that, let's say we didn't have that gift from the city. Then we would have to use 100% plant facility, but that's not a bad thing because
That's what it's.
that's
for.
what it's for. That's what the people voted for it on. But I think it would be a fair thing to look at that and say, we'll take this budgeted amount, take part of it from that one, part of it from the plant facility, and then when the grants come in, we basically just put it back into that. Is that, is that?
So my recommendation, money wise, would be at this point in time, pull it from one fund. And then when we amend the budget next spring, we can look and see how much money we got. And I can change where the funds came out of,
Makes it easier for you.
because it would be easier to track it if I had it just all in one fund. And then if we don't get reimbursed for all of it, then I can split the costs between the two.
I'd say use your emergency funds that we have and keep that 50K for if. I don't know if you use something to ever dress the school up or put a new court in or something to. I mean, the water benefits the school as well, but just to. I don't know.
It's definitely a consideration to look at, that it's there.
And then to know that you can make adjustments.
I can make adjustments but that would be my hope, is that the direction would be to pull it from plant for right now. And then we see how much we get. The other thing we have learned is the head of the EQ in Idaho is actually a West Jefferson graduate.
See the good we do here.
Yes, it is.
So right now, with this proposal, those would be the areas that we'll look at, and once we have everything finalized, I'll let the board know this is where it's all at, this is what we're doing, keep you in the loop. I did have another typo here, I should have put that one back to 45, my apologies, that one there, just for the record, should say 45. To match up that other one.
Let's calculate the cost.
No, it does. Possible.
But I will,
What is the whole?
I'd have a new well drilled on my farm here a few years ago. And I think just to drill the well is 23,000,
Can people afford it?
just for the well.
are you trying to change that, or?
No, I will.
No, nothing's cheap nowadays, Nedra.
Well,
That's the problem.
And that well that we're doing in Hamer is the same size well that was there before. It's just an 8-inch casing. We had another company come in that wanted us to do a 16 like we have here. 100 grand.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be that big.
No, not for that little school. Yeah. So, and with the stuff that we have now, so like the pump side of things, we're gonna put a variable speed drive pump in that's about 7.5 horsepower, which is about 3 horsepower than what's we got down there. And it'll basically control if they need more water, it kicks up the speed of the pump. And so we are upgrading the pump system too, under that price parameter. But yeah, the drilling itself is, and part of the reason it is high here in Hamer is because of lava rock. They know that they will go through bits there.
That's true.
So, and they said that, there's like, so they thought they could get it down to 16. But when they found out the address, they were like, no.
No.
So,
We're built on rock.
yeah.
Rock with sand on it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to refresh this before we vote.
I appreciate that.
Do that, but she's uploading that, so with this proposal, I'll keep the board informed of the process. All the spending items required by the district policy will be submitted for ratification, so. So once we get the final stuff in, like, I know we have our estimates up here. But once we get our final bill for the well drilling, anything over
We'll
10,000,
ratify it.
I'll come back in and ratify. Go ahead and
Yep.
refresh.
Refresh.
Did you add a new one or is it
I
on the
just replaced.
place on this one?
Yeah.
No, oh, hold on, there it goes. Just to refresh that, but I will keep you informed. Then that way, Mrs. Rigby, when it comes in,
Right out.
it's coming out. Refresh this.
Who does the grant? I mean, who has to do that?
The DEQ is saying they're gonna do all that, so I'm gonna let them.
Wouldn't that be something?
Let's see, yep, there we go, thank you for getting that, so we can make sure this is. So, any of those where we're spending it from and so we do have patrons asking, well, where did all that money come from? We have all of this available, and it's, you know, it's all the district's money to use. And so I'll let you know where it's at, and then how much we get offset by that, so that's gonna be the proposal from the school district with the Hazel Well situation.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, the floor is open to a motion to approve the superintendent to act in accordance with provisions of the proposal for the Hamer Well.
And Madam Vice Chair, I make that motion.
A second. Those in favor,
Aye.
motion passes. Hey, I have one quick question while we're on, talking about budgets. Bill, can you give us an update on the building signs, where we're at?
We just got out candid, I haven't even had a chance to move on those yet this summer. But it's there, I know we visited with them. Something that, even if I can have you, maybe we'll meet and figure out what we can do, to get some of these building signs. Whatever.
Yeah, the signs.
So
Yeah.
so if that's something that you and I can visit on, I have reached out
Forward him the information we got after they
from
met.
a company that came out and they looked at it and what we do, we have some ideas. Would that be something, especially now where we have a lift and things, and even in a couple weeks, if we have a skid steer with a telehandler. There's a lot of different things that might help reduce some costs of even a company.
Yeah, is that a in-house possibility of putting some of the signs up?
Yeah, that might actually reduce the cost, because initially when they came out, they were gonna install all of them.
So I can't remember, refresh my memory, was some of them gonna be lighted?
We had talked about it.
I can't remember what we said. What did we decide? Not,
Expensive.
it was too expensive.
I was gonna come back with some
Why?
final, like, I need to come back with some final things to the board, and I know that it's a priority, the board is, we put it on here, we've budgeted it for it, I just.
We're all right.
What are the things that have to be talked about, we have to. So thank you for asking that.
And the front of the high school looks really nice, by the way.
Thanks, I'm glad it worked, I was.
That's
So skeptical.
okay. All right, our last action item is the November board meeting date change.
Yes. ISBA conference, they keep scheduling their November board meeting the last couple of years,
The convention.
or the convention, the annual convention is scheduled it right during ours. So I guess there's two options for you guys. We could either keep it as is, well, three options, keep it as is. I know Willie, you're gonna be at the convention for sure. We haven't asked who all wants to go. I know that
I know Tanis wants to. go.
I think it's in, it's in Boise this year.
it's in Boise.
Coeur Lane's a long drive.
But we could move it to Tuesday, the 14th, but I don't know, Willie, if you have any meetings prior with your.
No,
regular vice-
we have a meeting in September.
But option two would just be to push it back to Tuesday, November 21st, which is the last day before. The Thanksgiving break. So,
I am going on a cruise that month, and I was gonna have to miss, so this, if we have it 21st, I won't have to miss. Which is, so, I'm so happy about
So you'd be
that.
better for that.
I would, but because I was worried about missing that one, I didn't want to, but
So from what you're saying, from your perspective, option 2 might be better
Right.
for you.
for me, with one vote.
That's
I think option 2 is better.
You guys. Okay. Right.
Or will be open for a motion to remove option 2 as the new date in November for our board meeting.
Madam Chair, I so. Voted that we do it.
Okay,
So glad.
is there a second?
Madam Vice Chair, I second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
I,
Passes, thank you. Great, to our discussion items.
So the discussion items that I have, the first one is just, it's informational, but also just helping helping the board see some of the things that we can move towards. House Bill 163, the Parents' Rights, bill. I'll just pull that bill up. There's a few highlights in here. With this Parent Rights Bill, I think the best way to explain this. Most of the provisions in this were already things that the school already did. They were already things that were there. And so in a way, they wanted to amend the section of parent rights. And whether the intent was to just clarify that parents, you have the right to know what's going on here at the school, and schools, you need to do the best you can to communicate those things with the parents. There's fear out there that schools are trying to indoctrinate and do things to students that parents don't agree with. And so this is a law that was put in to say, basically, just reaffirm that schools need to communicate with parents about certain things, and parents, you have the rights to come in here. And so, like I said, there's nothing really mind-blowing different on this, and it's just pretty common sense. But just that we have to have plans in place for parents to participate at school, to communicate. The underlying portions are the new portions. And so anything that with a change in a student's mental health, emotional health, physical well-being, if the school recognizes that, parents need to know about that. The reinforcement of fundamental rights and responsibilities of parents as primary stakeholders to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of the parent's child. So it's just like, just schools have to have a process for staff to discuss related issues about well-being. The biggest thing I think in here, I wish they would have put in here, is the parents, please get your kids to school because we're changing to ADA. There's two of them. One is if a school resource officer visits with the student, parents are needing to be informed. And the next one is surveys. Those are the two biggest ones that I see, that anytime there's a survey that they used to be able to have an opt-out form. Now you have to basically have an opt-in form on any survey that talks about mental health, drugs, alcohol, tobacco, anything like that's personal with the kids has to have an opt-in. That will be more burdensome for the schools. Like there's certain things where even like this summer, I received a couple of requests for surveys. And I'm just gonna say, because of this law, it's more burdensome for us to go through the process to have parents say, yeah, I'll opt into that, because we then have to provide every single question for them. This is what it's doing. And so that might hurt some of the other state agencies inadvertently, but that's how it goes. The other thing with the parents' rights, ISBA did send out a memo to all of the schools. And they said, these are the policies that you're probably going to want to address because of this law. And so they do have a 4410. We have that in procedure. But they're saying that you don't really need 4410 because that can all now be addressed in 3545. And so I just put on here just that this is, we're not gonna put this as a first reading for 3544. But they do have a policy recommendation. We will work through this over the next month, so we can have a first reading in August on this one, just to show that this is what we're moving to make sure that we're in compliance with that House bill. The second part of that memo, or they also talked about updates on restraint and seclusion. And I put that in there as another model. So ISBA did not give us a model for that because the State Department put one of those out. So with restraint and seclusion, this is gonna be a sample board policy. I'm gonna sit down with our special ed department, look at that. We'll have a first reading available for the school board in August on that section. And so these are all both samples. I just wanted to use this moment of discussion to let the board know that this is what we're doing to address those changes in state law. And with the restraint and seclusion law that came in and the different things for the school districts, there was a grant for support for professional development that we've applied for. We're hoping to get that, where we'll be able to train all of our special ed staff in this. And so that's just want to let the board know that that's where we're moving in that direction. So I don't know, do you have any questions on House Bill 163 or things that? Any concern, I guess concerns, I guess that's the thing, is that you have concerns with it.
I wish they would put in somewhere where it's the parents' priority to get their kids to school
That's
So we don't,
on time.
on time,
Yeah, because, you know, we've had a few students in the past that struggled.
so with all of our students, if we call them in for anything, or if we do anything with them, it's always with the parents knowing. If we,
I would say that generally speaking, yes. There are probably some small ones where they bring them in and there's no. Like I'm talking like when I was a principal, and I know that with Mr. Johnson, if there's something that comes in, a student that comes in, I would say most of the time, the parent, hey, I just visit with your kid today. This is, occasionally they'll have a time where I needed to visit with you, you're not in trouble. What did you see at recess? You know, they were a witness to something. And there's a difference between law enforcement and administration. You know, and here is, if there's an investigation going on with a resource officer, this is where the new law says, resource officer, we need to make sure we have a better deal. And I guess that you could look at that and say, there might have been some times where there was an investigation going on and the parents were like, well, I'm at the school, why is the resource officer talking to my kid? There are some good things in this bill. And it's gonna be the things on that, we can always try to do a better job of communication. Communication is, it's hard, and you know that you've screwed up when you've screwed up. That's the thing, is people are like, hey, I wasn't informed about that. And so we do make the best effort that we can to keep parents involved, parents aware of everything. Sometimes things happen and we just mess up and we don't get it all the way communicated. Like we're human still, but we need to try to always make sure that when these things happen, so that's a good question.
I would think so. I would think this day and age, you want to communicate, but however you communicate with parents, to let them have a quick note that so-and-so was in the office visiting with me today about.
Yep. And that's something with our app and our webs, with the new communication system. That's something that should be easy to do. But it should facilitate this process better. So
So I would make sure principals know that they're supposed to do that. Every time we talk to a kid.
but that's something we'll have to look at that. Not every time you talk to a kid, but if it's
I
discipline,
think when you bring them in,
if it's anything to do with discipline or mental health, social, like
I was
emotional,
thinking mental health, yeah.
and it has that on here, Mrs. Scott.
How
on
about
that.
bullying?
We bring them in for.
That would fall under
That'd be
disciplinary.
disciplinary.
Okay.
That chart makes it pretty clear that it's in the student handbook, I think of areas where that would be more disciplinary versus.
Yeah. So. Yeah, because that's just information discussion. So any other comments or? Good. Okay. Mr. Drummond, you see that did you have a chance to upload the draft part to the high school?
Oh, I will upload that. Everybody has a hard copy though.
Yeah.
I'll have to go to my office too.
Okay. So with the discussion information part on the high school handbook. This is gonna be an opportunity for the school board to provide feedback, as this is in a draft format. This is not completed, and I do want to say thank you to Mrs. Scott. And Mrs. DeGraw for reading through and looking at that. I have some suggestions also that we can look at. I know that there's suggestions from different teacher committees also, so some of the things that we put in here. These are just, we're trying to get as much as possible, but we did have a lot of changes from semester to, from trimester to semester. And then also with the new principal, it's something where we look
What's
at.
the format going to be?
I thought I just brought it. It's actually gonna get bound in a little spiral thing that has a harder cover.
Like this?
And I really liked it,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, in booklet form, and it'll have a spiral cover with or a spiral binding with a harder cover, and I really like that, because it'll make it a little more durable for kids. And smaller, so they keep it in the backpack, and my intention is that it's not just we hand it to kids and then they put it in their backpack and then it gets lost, is that they look through it, that they know what's in there. I know Carrie said it will be available for parents. We are working on, now that it's, when the draft is ready, we're gonna try to translate it into Spanish. So that'll be accessible for parents, in that language as well.
So you're gonna have an assembly and go through some of the part of the signature. And so, do we have some time to take this home and read it, because I haven't, I haven't read it.
Yeah, and so where this looks like, when it comes to the board, where this is a board policy, you can look at that and share your feedback directly to me or to Mrs. Scott. Just say, you know what, I feel strongly about this, consider this. And to put that in there.
And it didn't really change, like I didn't change much of the disciplinary or any of the procedure. I put in the new policy you just voted on today, but obviously that would have been adjusted had you not approved it to show the graduation thing, because I think for the next couple of years, kids need to see that and parents need to see that. So it is in there, and it was exactly, so it's your 2700 policy, and it's now been approved. That's one of the things I put in, and then a teacher group, starting with the leadership team, and then they titled it the United Front Committee, which,
That was their name.
yes, they got together and wanted a more procedural based element to help our students with athletic eligibility. That has turned into, we're gonna look at all kids' eligibility, like how are they doing? And so they added in, kind of, it's an older policy that we've had. I don't know if Tyson was in school and if he remembers it, but if kids were failing at a certain point, they ran a blue slip. We're not gonna necessarily do a blue slip, it's gonna be more like wise with self-reporting. This committee was really passionate about it. We had talked in the AD with the new AD and activities people about fixing some things, and the committee was like, you didn't ask us before you changed them, and I'm like, I'm learning that, and I will do better next time, because I thought our changes weren't like a big deal.
Well, and here's part of the process, because that committee was also put together with previous administrators.
Yeah.
And so you're coming right into the middle of that mix. And anytime we have a teacher committee, and they're gonna be bringing the things that there's that balance between
Oh, yeah.
those committees are putting together recommendations.
Yep.
And that's the thing that maybe it wasn't put that way, and I don't think it was, I think it was presented by the previous principal as, you guys write this and this is what it's gonna be. And it should have been presented as, give us your recommendation, your why, we might have some different ideas to change that. So I think Carrie's working on getting this, so I can pull this up, we can talk through
And
it.
for the most part on that one, because I communicated with the committee after. All I changed was, and I told them my why, and I think that helped them, so then they didn't care. Cause I said, I've done this before, and we were doing it every 6 weeks. And that's, I mean, teachers should be grading consistently anyway. But kids coming up and interrupting classes because they needed a blue slip signed or their grade wasn't good and they wanted to play and. Were you in school when that happened? Did you do blue slip?
I don't remember.
You probably didn't ever have to run one, so he was okay.
Well, I don't know.
I just said, when I made that decision, so I just said, let's do it instead of, they wanted it every 3 weeks. So within a semester, that's almost 6 grade checks. Is it 6? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and then 18. And I just said, let's do it once a month, every second Monday. And that, so as I was talking with some teachers about something else, that kind of came up that I had made those changes and they happened to be on that committee and they're like, you know, you probably don't want to do that without asking the committee. So I went back, we gave the kids a week grace period to get it up for the high school, just like the junior high, because our athletes can be really busy. Football's only once a week and cross country in the fall, but volleyball isn't. It can be 3 times a week sometimes. So kids are gonna be leaving and they're not gonna have that time to get it made up if we immediately say you can't play until your grade's up. So we wanted a grace period where they had some time. In basketball, it's the same way and softball is the same way. So we added that in as our group talked. And they were okay with the grace period. They were okay with moving it to the month instead of the 3 weeks, because I said, hey, I have you guys in mind when I made this decision, because I've done it and it's a lot of work. Because you have kids consistently jumping in. The one that they all wanted, and one of them was a coach that they really liked, was that kids need to be showing their coaches their grades too. They want kids to be a part of this because every kid has access to their grades on their device. And if they don't have a phone, they can pull it up on a Chromebook. And Corey is the one that especially had really strong feelings, like everybody in the group, the only feedback I got was on kids self-reporting to their coaches. Just to bring a little bit more student accountability. And I wrote back to Corey and I said, it's not gonna be kind of a delay in your practice. And he said, we want the academics to be a part of our practice. And he said, as long as it's that one time, so it would hit them about 2 times. So they would have to do it just 2 times by doing it once a month. He said, as long as it's organized, it's on a certain day and we do it right then. He didn't think it would be a big deal, and he's gonna be dealing with some of the biggest group, like I think track and football will be our biggest group of kids. So
One
I
thing
was
that-
okay with that.
as I was looking at the going to the draft,
Madam. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I gotta leave now.
all right, let's see what we.
Sorry, thank you.
So one of the recommendations that I have on this. You really, yeah. So one of my recommendations on this would be, as we go back and look at it, let's remember the audience. The audience should be students and parents. And this was one thing that when I was going through a few of the other things, sometimes we put things that were more specific to the teachers, like the procedures. And so maybe we could even put some of those areas. A process will be developed by administration where students will report these grades, self-reported grades. And just have that. And then when we take that information to the coaches, we're like, this is how it looks.
That's fine.
And so I don't know if there's anything else specific. The other thing besides the grades, let me just pull this up.
Was attendance.
The attendance. And that's gonna be one, and This looks great. A lot of work on this.
So who highlighted it in the yellow? Is that changes that were made?
Carrie and I did so that you would look
Those
at
are
that.
questions
Yeah, those-
about how we want that.
Yeah, and that's gonna be stuff that we'll look.
That eventually falls on you as well.
So if we take this and we review this and then we come back with our thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can send your thoughts to me.
And one of the things that I found as I was studying this, it was actually a letter to a student from another district. And they have with administration in the building and parents a meeting when the attendance gets to a point that we're concerned. And we said 4, because we're trying to keep them at 5 a semester. And if they come in and we make a plan and they're doing better and they're doing things like to fix that. If it got to 8, so you guys wouldn't even see them until 8. We would say they worked on an attendance plan, their grades are okay, then that, or parents didn't come in, they've continued to miss, they're over their amount. That allows maybe you to have some evidence for your decision that you are gonna have to make. That's kind of a hard one. So that's, I liked their process. If you want changes added to it or whatever, I just thought that was kind of a way to let them know that we have to take it a little bit more serious. And I think parents need to know why. And it's because of what the state's done with ADA. And it doesn't just mean we don't have teachers, it means programs get cut and classes have to be reduced. And we have bigger class sizes because we have bigger. So I think when they know that, they'll support it. So that's why I put it in what I did.
There's, oh, go ahead.
No.
Cause I have another thought. With the verified absences, excused absences. I was hoping, because this was all during COVID and stuff like this, where we came in and my hope was that we could get kids to school, because what was happening was, let's say I miss 8 days, and 8 of those, and 4 of those are, half of those were medical excused, and so then really, we had students that are going like, oh, I can still miss a day this week because those were all excused absences. So I'm gonna ditch school on this day because I can still get up to 5. And that was actually happening. So I was wanting to say, keep in mind that, well, if you're gone regardless of what it is, up to the 5 absences. But I don't know, is that the right thing to do? Is it better to say, we need to know where your kid's at, but we will excuse it for these things. We will excuse it for medical at a doctor's office. We will excuse it for death in the family, bereavements, things like that, like the same types of things, and call those excused absences. But then you're gonna get the parents to say, well, my kid's homesick, I know where they're at, but I'm not taking them into the doctor. That's where we're going, well, that's a verified absence and still counts against them, but thank you for letting us know where it's at, but it's not excused. Because we do have parents who their definition of sick is different than others. And in a parent's mind, they think that they're 100% right. From our viewpoint, it might be like, hey, I think you're kind of covering for your kid, because we do have parents that will cover for their kids. And not saying that's wrong, not judging you for that, but it's just look at it from our perspective of how do we now govern that? How do we now follow that policy without coming in and saying, I think this note that you sent was bogus.
When we talked, the attendance secretary would still mark like sick or funeral or whatever, so that then again, when you had to make a decision, you would be able to say a lot of these
So
things because they were.
I don't know.
Well, we don't want students who are sick, because we found that out in COVID, that it used to be that you try to get 100% all year and people would come with colds and flu, and we don't want them here sick.
Then now we're going back to
We want them here sick.
Who's sick and who's really not.
who's,
sick.
there's two.
There's 2 different types of sick. There's, I don't feel like getting out of bed today, so I'm sick. And mom and dad passes that off multiple times, I just don't feel like going to school today.
I don't see.
Or there's the person who's really sick, they were up all
Are you
night.
gonna question parents saying
You
you're
can't,
sick?
we can't question them.
You
That's,
can't,
that's what puts us,
That's kind of the problem.
we want
that is
to
the
trust our parents.
Yeah,
But it's,
You don't have any other choice.
but
And there was an article out, I don't know if you saw it, that Idaho Education News ran. Just within the last year, and I tried to find it, but it doesn't go back, I'd have to look it up, but. We have a chronic absenteeism problem in our schools, and it is a result from COVID, but just within the last year, like they have numbers. And I can't remember them off the top of my head that were pretty staggering.
yeah,
That. I don't know, that's why
21% is what they were.
21%, like that's a lot of kids.
Well, other than sending out the police to see if they're really sick, I don't see what you can do.
We're
Well-
asking parents to verify when the student is absent. So
Yeah. they
anytime a
call in.
student is not there, we should have a call from the parent saying
Yes, and
where they're.
our attendance secretaries do a really good job of that, and they could track that. But what he's saying is that part of their 5 absences are those illnesses. That unless it's like under a doctor's care of mono and they have a medical note. They should try to be here as much as they can.
So do we say that medical absences may be excused at administration's discretion?
I just think it's their decision, wouldn't it be? Eventually, when they got there to that 8. You could look and be like. This was a medically verified reason. My question is do we still have them do Saturday schools and detention and to make up seat time? There's another thing we need to address, and that's the vacations and the things that parents plan. Where they miss a lot of school, and we know that that's there. I mentioned I had a student that did that, they left. And I was hoping, I was like, well, if we planned it with the semester, they left at Christmas. And they saved their days, then maybe where that semester breaks in January now. It wouldn't hit as hard, but it's gonna happen, and I'm trying to figure out, like, do we still say, cause that one student I had, she came back and she was all caught up, her grades were good. She did everything we asked her to do, but then she had to serve like 40 hours of detention. To make up for the days she missed.
So
So she's
technically,
still missed
she
them.
was a blended student.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm trying to figure out, how does that work?
I think you can count blended stuff.
So we wouldn't have marked her absent, because she was caught up and passing. Okay, that's,
As long as you can verify that they're
They're doing the work.
doing the blended work.
yeah, she was very good. She got it while she was gone. She had a little bit to catch up with when she got home. Most of it was math. For mine, she was pretty much. They were in honors English.
Cause that's something that you could look at even with if kids are gone for different reasons and they're keeping their work up. That's the thing is, there's 2 sides to this. One, we want students in here, the academic side. We want them here at school so they can actually learn. But we also have learned from COVID that kids can do things online and still be part of the learning process, even though they're not here.
So for me, I guess, how do we define
So
that?
is it a case by case basis?
It
Have
almost,
that, I don't
It
like that.
would almost have to be.
yeah.
And that would
Because
be
each circumstance is
your
different.
case by case, right?
Because if we have a specific learning plan for each kid, you almost have this with the attendance. Then the flip side of the academic is the finance side, where we're just getting shoved right back into the archaic funding formula of get the kids here, teach them how to work in a factory, make sure that they're here every single day. Whether they're actually engaged or not, we don't care. As long as they're here, then that means you're in a good school. But there's so many factors that are now going against us with that, with one where we shouldn't have a year sick coughing on everybody, especially, but we're stuck in such a tough situation.
Well, now that we have learning that can come right in your phone,
That could count, like,
that could count if they tune in, can it?
they can.
Well, why don't we do that?
So that's gonna be something that's just gonna be, the tricky part is you're gonna have
I don't wanna shoot everybody towards that,
no,
but in a situation where they're home and can.
and I don't know if we'll be able to have procedures in place completely for that. With everything on how it connects to
What-
attendance, but you
What
can
we've
see.
done with, so I'll tell you what I did with that student that left. She didn't really tune in to the live class. There probably is that potential. But before she left, I gave her everything she needed and she arranged that. And then I typed her out like Monday as we went, I said, this is what we did. But she went a step further and she was even texting her friends. So she said, what did we get through? Cause I made that list for her. And then I tried to amend it if cause sometimes class discussion took more, or sometimes, you know, we did it just a little bit different. And so I would try to let her know, but she would also text her friends, which I was really impressed about. Like, to me, as a student, that showed that she cared, but she was also doing something. So I was really impressed, and her older sister was the same way. So my thinking is it comes from the family telling them that, like, yeah, we're doing this, but your responsibility is to get this.
As far as attendance goes, then this blended learning day and makeup days. No, then being there, right? They can, if they're absent during the week.
I think
they
it's
can do a
gonna,
blended
I think
day.
it's like what Mrs. Raby is saying is it might be an individual base, like you're looking at the attendance. And then you're seeing how have you kept up with your schooling with that? And if you can probably show that you've kept up with it. Then I think they make a strong argument for not losing credit.
What do you do with kids that are gone on volleyball or basketball? How do we account for those absences? I mean, they get them 3 times, like you said, sometimes 3 times a week. What do we do? We don't count them absent. do we?
No,
No, that's a school excuse, but it's still marked absent and it'll have a different code. And you can see that. But here's the scary thing. You get a kid who was in softball, missing 3 times a week, pretty much the whole season. Yeah. But then misses their 5 days.
on top of that,
On top of that. Or the family vacation or that was even longer. That's a lot of out of class time. So again, that could be like she said, you look at that case by case, if they got to those 8 absences and they're already missing school excuse stuff, there just needs to be some better planning.
I think if we can verify that they've. But again, we don't want to open the door to people saying, I'm just gonna miss every single thing and do everything online. If that's the way that they want to do their schooling,
Then
they
need
should
to be an online.
they need to be an online student. Like, that's the thing that we need to say, hey, stay in here, but it looks like online is a better option, because when you're gone like this, you're
So it
creating
sounds
havoc on the
to
classroom.
me like we really need some definitions.
Could you be half on
Of-
and half there?
That's
Yeah,
blended.
that's a blended.
So we need some really strong definitions of. This is what makes you an online student. This is what makes you a blended student. And this is because you can't just, like, they need to know, yeah, I'm probably gonna miss like 10 days. In advance, unless it's an emergency, which obviously you look at, but I think we need some definitions so that. You don't just be like, oh, my family's gonna be gone, so I'm gonna now become a blended student. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I guess I don't know. For me, I don't wanna push them. In that direction unless I know that that's kind of where we're at, like I'm okay with gray, but. We probably want to define like, this is what makes you this. And if we want that to be a part of it, that's great.
I think, I don't know, is there any other questions I think that we had as administration that we might want feedback from the board, anything specific? I know it
I would just
was,
say a deadline, we want to give it to them the first day of school. So we hope,
Holidays and what?
yeah,
Like within the next week or
yeah,
so.
I think you need to look through it.
we'll want to have time to be able to finalize it. We're going to the local, like, Idaho Falls printer
Yeah.
binder, they're pretty quick, they're turned around,
They are.
like that, so.
And bring us a copy. I have to get.
All right, put that on your list. So, all right, well, we just wanted to have that as an option for the board to be able to give us feedback and help us out with that.
Okay, thank you, very good. Yeah. All right, floor will be open for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Chair and move it. We adjourn this meeting.
Those in favor?
Probably.